The moon over Bedburg had a way of staring down at the small German town, as if it knew something the people did not. It hung low and oversized in the night sky, silver, cold, and almost watchful, casting long shadows over the fields, the woods, and the narrow dirt paths that wound between farmhouses like veins. In the late 1500s, Bedburg was a quiet place. A place where the biggest excitement was the harvest season or the occasional traveling merchant. But beneath that quiet charm was a darkness waiting to be awakened. It began slowly. A missing sheep here. A torn goat carcass there. Farmers whispered about wolves. But even then, something didn't seem right. Wolves kill to eat. They don't shred animals and leave them behind like gruesome trophies. Then, a local girl went missing. She had gone into the woods at dusk to collect firewood. When she didn't return, her mother raised the alarm. Torches were lit, names were shouted, and the search party combed the forest until someone found a trail of blood, bright red, against the dead leaves. They followed it until they found her. Her small body lay broken, twisted, torn apart by something with jaw strength far beyond any wolf known to man. Even the hunters stepped back in horror. One whispered that no ordinary animal could have done that. Fear began to seep into Bedburg like a creeping fog. But in the middle of all this rising terror lived a man whom everyone trusted, Peter Stubbe. A widowed farmer, a quiet man, a familiar face at the market. He smiled kindly at neighbors, offered to help repair fences, and often gave extra grain to families struggling through winter. No one suspected him of anything, except perhaps being too generous. Wolves, they said, a pack of them, a plague upon the town. But the attacks grew stranger. Bodies weren't always eaten. Sometimes they were posed, displayed, marked with claw slashes far too deliberate for an animal. Travelers vanished from the roadside. Young boys, shepherds, even 2 grown men found mutilated in the fields. Bedburg was beginning to suffocate under fear. One night, a shepherd swore he saw a creature, not quite wolf, and not quite man, a hulking figure with glowing eyes, standing over one of his sheep. When he shouted, the creature turned its head slowly, as if amused, and then sprinted into the woods on 2 legs. 2 legs. People laughed at him at first. But when bodies continued showing up, laughter turned to dread. Still, Peter Stubbe, he remained strangely calm. Too calm. As though nothing in the world could shake him. If only the town knew the truth hiding behind that gentle smile. As winter set in, the forest surrounding Bedburg became even more dangerous. Snow muffled sound, but it also revealed tracks, massive prints far larger than any wolf's. Hunters followed them. They always ended suddenly, as if the creature simply vanished into thin air. People whispered that witchcraft was involved. Others said the devil had sent a beast to torment them. But the truth was worse. One night beneath a full moon, a group of young hunters determined to end the terror marched into the woods with spears, torches, and trembling resolve. The forest was unnaturally silent. No owls, no wind, just the crunch of snow beneath their boots. Then came the howl. Long, echoing, inhuman. It vibrated through their chests and stole their breath. The youngest among them nearly dropped his spear. Another muttered a prayer under his breath. Something stalked them, circling them. They could hear its breathing. Slow, steady, intelligent. Torches flickered wildly as shadows shifted around them. Then it stepped into view. A towering creature covered in dark, coarse fur. Eyes burning like molten gold. A snout lined with serrated teeth. But the worst part wasn't the monstrous, wolf-like form. The worst part was that it stood like a man. The hunters froze. Not one dared move. The creature moved closer, slow, deliberate, confident. As though it had cornered prey countless times before. And then, with a roar that split the night, it lunged. Chaos erupted. Torches flew. Snow exploded under frantic footsteps. The beast tore through their line, ripping one man apart with a single swipe, gripping another by the throat, and throwing him into a tree like a rag doll. Only 2 men survived that night, one with half his ear missing, the other with a scar so deep across his chest that he never took off his shirt again. They limped back to Bedburg at dawn, shaking, sobbing, barely coherent. And when the villagers asked them what they saw, all they could say was, "It was no wolf." "God help us!" It was no wolf. Panic consumed the town. The mayor ordered curfews. Priests sprinkled holy water at every doorstep. Children were forbidden to play outside. Merchants refused to travel to nearby towns. And still, the killings continued. Peter Stubbe comforted grieving families, listened to their stories, attended funerals. But each time he did, there was a strange glint in his eye, something cold, calculating, almost amused. He would return home to his farm at dusk, close the door behind him, and disappear until morning. No one asked why. Rumors spread that the creature had been seen near the river. Others claimed it roamed the wheat fields. Fear turned neighbors against each other. People locked their shutters and whispered behind closed doors. But one man refused to hide. A seasoned hunter named Hans Meyer, known for tracking wolves for over 30 years. He was fearless, stubborn, and had lost his nephew to the beast. Rage clouded his judgment. Hans swore publicly that he would find the creature and mount its head over his fireplace. Some begged him to stop. Others believed he might actually succeed. So one moonlit night, Hans entered the woods alone. He carried a long spear, silver-tipped, soaked in holy water. Around his neck hung a rosary. He had marked every tree, memorized every trail, and studied the patterns of the beast's attacks. Hans moved silently through the underbrush, following broken branches, deep claw marks on tree trunks, and patches of black fur snagged on thorns. Hours passed, his breath fogged in the cold night air. Then, he heard it. Crunch. A slow, deliberate footstep behind him. Hans didn't turn immediately. He tightened his grip on the spear, heart pounding. He knew the creature was close. "Show yourself," he growled into the darkness. Silence. Then, a voice. A human voice. "You should not have come alone, Hans." The hunter spun around, confused. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. From the shadows stepped Peter Stubbe, calm, smiling, hands behind his back like a man taking a midnight stroll. "Hans," Peter said softly. Hans scoffed. "Because it has taken too many, including my own blood." Peter approached him slowly, eyes glinting. "And if I told you the creature is beyond your weapon? Beyond your prayers?" Hans raised the spear threateningly. Peter sighed, almost sadly. And then, a crack of bones, a tearing of skin, a monstrous transformation unfolding before Hans's eyes. Peter's body twisted grotesquely. His limbs stretched, his jaw elongated into a snout. Fur erupted from his skin. Within seconds, the gentle farmer vanished, and the beast stood before him, the werewolf of Bedburg. Hans thrust the spear forward with a desperate cry, but the beast was too fast, too strong. It grabbed the shaft mid-thrust, snapped it effortlessly, and crushed Hans's skull with one brutal strike. His body lay lifeless, steam rising from the warm blood spreading across the snow. The beast lifted its head and howled triumphantly, its deep roar echoing across the entire valley. Bedburg shuddered. For now, the monster had tasted the blood of its hunter, and the real hunt was about to begin. For weeks, the murders grew even more savage. Entire families found torn apart, horses gutted, cartwheels shattered. Villagers saw glowing eyes watching from the tree line but ran before the beast revealed itself fully. Bedburg was nearing collapse. Desperate and terrified, a group of townsmen formed a secret vigilante band. They swore oaths in candlelit rooms, armed themselves with silver tools stolen from churches, and patrolled the outskirts at night. They hoped to trap the creature. They did not expect what happened instead. One night, they cornered a large wolf-like shape near a ravine. The creature growled, teeth bared, ready to tear them apart. But then, something unexpected happened. A crossbow bolt struck the beast's hind leg. It howled, stumbled, and for the first time, retreated. The men chased it across the fields until it limped into the woods and vanished. They searched until dawn. Then, near a large oak tree, they found a trail of blood, but instead of wolf prints, they found human footprints, bare, bleeding, leading directly to the property of none other than Peter Stubbe. At first, the men hesitated. Peter had helped many of them, worked alongside them, shared drinks with them. But the footprints didn't lie. When they stormed his cottage at dawn, they found Peter inside, calm, quiet, and with a fresh wound on his leg. The same leg they had shot. They seized him, tied him, dragged him into the street. Peter did not resist. He merely stared at them with an unreadable expression. When they demanded answers, he finally spoke. He confessed. His voice was chillingly steady as he claimed he had been given a magical belt, a belt from the devil himself that allowed him to transform into a monstrous wolf at will. With it, he had prowled the countryside for years, killing, hunting, feeding. Some of the men recoiled. Others scoffed, thinking he was lying to escape torture. But then Peter said something that made even the bravest among them tremble. "Remove the belt from my home, and the wolf inside me dies." The men rushed back into his cottage, searching every corner, every drawer, every hidden compartment. No belt was ever found. Some said it was never real. Others believed it vanished when Peter was captured. But one thing was clear. The creature had been a man all along, and that man stood before them, bound, trembling not from fear, but from hunger. Peter Stubbe was dragged to Bedburg's courthouse, a stone building that felt colder than the winter outside. The townspeople gathered by the hundreds, desperate for answers, desperate for a villain to blame for years of terror. Peter was thrown into chains, stretched across a torture rack, until every joint screamed in agony. But instead of denying his crimes, he laughed. A low, guttural laugh that chilled the interrogators to the bone. Under torture, Peter detailed every kill, every attack, every horrifying transformation. He described how he felt his bones shift, his senses sharpen, his hunger spike into an uncontrollable frenzy. He spoke of stalking children like prey, of tearing men apart for sport, of ripping unborn babies from their mothers' wombs. The room fell silent. Some men left in disgust. Others crossed themselves repeatedly. Was he lying? Was he possessed? Or had Bedburg been living alongside a true monster in human skin? Peter then named accomplices 2 women, including his own daughter. The town, driven by hysteria, arrested them as well, though their involvement was widely doubted even at the time. But Peter? His guilt seemed undeniable. Yet there was one part of the confession that haunted the judges the most. Peter claimed that when he transformed, he was still conscious, still aware, still human enough to enjoy the suffering he caused, human enough to choose evil. That thought alone turned the stomachs of everyone in the room. On the morning of the 31st of October 1589, Bedburg gathered at the edge of town for an execution so brutal it would be remembered for centuries. A wooden wheel stood tall in the center of the field. A fire pit burned beside it. Chains and iron claws lay waiting. Peter Stubbe was dragged forward, gaunt, yet smiling faintly, as though he knew something others didn't. The executioner read the charges. The crowd whispered prayers. Some fainted. Others watched with grim fascination. Peter's execution was designed to purge evil from Bedburg. His flesh was torn with red-hot pincers. His arms and legs were shattered with the spokes of the execution wheel. His head was severed. His body burned. His remains displayed on public stakes as a warning. The 2 accused women were also executed. As Peter's skull crackled in the flames, people whispered that they heard a howl deep, echoing, carried by the wind. Some claimed they felt the ground tremble. Others swore they saw a shadow fleeing into the forest. A few believed the monster inside him was dead, but many feared it had merely returned to its true master. For months after Peter's execution, Bedburg tried to return to normal life. Farmers repaired their fences. Children returned to playing in the fields. Merchants reopened their stalls. But the scars remained. The terror had changed them. Every rustling branch made hearts race. Every full moon made shutters slam shut. And every once in a while, someone claimed to see glowing eyes in the woods. Some believed Peter Stubbe was simply a madman, a murderer whose crimes were exaggerated by superstition. Others believed he truly was a werewolf, cursed or empowered by dark forces. Centuries later, historians still argue about the truth. Was Peter a serial killer? A victim of mass hysteria? Or one of the first recorded cases of lycanthropy in Europe? But in Bedburg, the story is still whispered around campfires. Because some nights, when the moon is full and the wind grows cold, travelers passing near the old fields claim they hear a long, mournful howl rising from the forest. A howl that sounds less like an animal and more like a man whose soul was lost long ago, a man who wore the face of a friend and the heart of a monster. The werewolf of Bedburg still lives in the fears, the legends, and the shadows of the German countryside. And perhaps, just perhaps, in the hearts of those who walk too close to darkness.